You've probably heard of Split or Moon Knight, but what if I said a 1998 episode of Star Trek Voyager might actually give one of the most insightful portrayals of dissociative identity disorder ever put to screen? Hi, I'm Chris, and I'm the guy behind the DID music videos that you may have seen on my channel. In May 2025, my life was shattered by an incredibly strange and disturbing event. I came to late one Saturday night, confused and terrified, in the middle of a horrendous online fight with my polycule family. Everyone was angry, everyone was pointing at me, and I had no idea how I ended up in the situation. My memories were a handful of jagged fragments, flashes of rage, ill intent, and a sickening sense that I had been doing something horribly wrong that was completely at odds with my personal values. Then, shortly afterward, many of those fragments began slipping away too, leaving nothing but panic and shame. After weeks of pain and confusion, I was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, a discovery that didn't just give a label for what was happening to me, but forced me to re-examine my entire life through a new lens of dissociation, uncovering large gaps in my memory, often replaced with false memories of things that never actually happened, and trying to understand who and even what I really am. I've since spent hundreds of hours researching the condition and turning inward to understand my own system of alters, who they are, why they exist, and how they've shaped my story. I decided early on that I wanted to be open about my disorder. Dissociative identity disorder is one of the most misunderstood and heavily stigmatized mental health conditions, largely due to how it's portrayed in media. We've all seen the same tired tropes: the evil alter, the violent criminal with multiple personalities, the plot twist villain who wasn't themselves. These depictions are not only inaccurate, but they're deeply harmful. That's why I'm here today, not just to tell my story, but to educate and to give a clear picture of what it's actually like to live with DID. And rather than beginning with a traditional "here's who I am" video, I want to start with something that's brought me hope, comfort, and inspiration throughout my life: Star Trek. I've been a lifelong fan of the franchise, and today I want to explore an often overlooked episode of Star Trek Voyager that weaves dissociative identity disorder into a Borg storyline centered on Seven of Nine. Despite its sci-fi premise, with personalities emerging from different alien species, I believe Infinite Regress offers one of the most unexpectedly accurate portrayals of DID in television. Jeri Ryan, who plays Seven of Nine, does an extraordinary job of embodying not just the symptoms of DID, but the emotional reality, the fear, the disorientation, the isolation. Especially for those of us who are newly discovering our systems, that emotional landscape can feel overwhelming. This episode gets a lot of that right. We'll be diving into the episode Infinite Regress and comparing that portrayal to what DID is actually like to live with, both from my own perspective as well as from what I've learned from others in the DID community. But before we get into the episode, let's briefly cover what DID actually is in a nutshell. Dissociative Identity Disorder, or DID, is a complex trauma response, a self-defense mechanism that develops in early childhood when a child is exposed to repeated or overwhelming trauma that they can't escape. To survive these experiences, the brain learns to dissociate, to mentally step away from the reality of what's happening. Over time, these moments of disconnection prevent the development of a single unified sense of self. Instead of one cohesive identity, the child's mind stores different aspects of memory, emotion, and experience into separate compartments. These are known as alters. They're distinct states of consciousness, each with its own perspective, memories, needs, and behaviors. It's important to understand that DID isn't too many personalities. It's one personality that never had the chance to fully form. Each alter developed to handle something the others couldn't. Together, they are the person. Because DID arises from a failure to consolidate these early ego states, there isn't an original self or a core personality that's split into parts. All alters are equally real, equally valid, and together they make up the whole range of human emotion. DID can present in many different ways. Sometimes it looks overt, like in the episode we're about to discuss, where the changes are obvious and visible, but in most cases, it's far more covert. Subtle shifts in emotion, mannerisms, tone of voice, or even preferences may be the only sign that a different alter is fronting. Many systems mask so effectively that even close friends and family never realize what's happening. And this can mean the person with DID themselves can go for years or even decades without even knowing it. Until some event, like what happened to me, shatters the illusion and the system is forced to reveal itself. Of course, that is a very simplified overview. And if you'd like to learn more, both clinically and from lived experience, I recommend checking out resources like the CTAD Clinic on YouTube. There's a link in the description. They do a brilliant job of explaining the mechanics and the realities of DID, and also how to support people. DID isn't fiction, but today we're going to explore what happens when fiction gets close enough to tell you something real. Infinite Regress is a Season 5 episode of Star Trek Voyager that first aired in 1998. In it, 7 of 9 begins to exhibit some strange behaviors, slipping into unfamiliar identities without warning. The crew traces the cause to a damaged Borg vinculum, a central device designed to suppress individuality and enforce collective order within the Borg vessel. But this vinculum has been infected by a deliberate viral attack, designed to destabilize the Borg by reawakening the submerged identities of assimilated drones. As Voyager passes near the debris of a destroyed Borg ship, the infected vinculum's signal penetrates Seven's neural pathways, flooding her mind with chaotic surges of other personalities, fragments of lives once consumed by the collective. What follows is a tense and disorienting battle to preserve her own sense of identity before it's overwritten entirely. Our episode begins with 7 of 9 in her regeneration alcove, hearing a cacophony of voices while she's asleep. She steps out of the alcove with an aggressive demeanor, looking around the cargo bay, as if she was unfamiliar with her surroundings. She finds herself in the mess hall and begins tossing bowls of food onto the floor from the countertop before discovering a large piece of meat in the refrigerator, which she tears into savagely, while the camera shows a male Klingon mirroring her actions in her reflection. This cold open immediately introduces us to the core dissociative theme of the episode, the experience of being overtaken by something within yourself that you don't recognize as being you. For many people with DID, this moment is all too real. You might suddenly wake up somewhere that feels unfamiliar, not knowing how you got there. For some alters, this confusion happens even inside their own home. If a part hasn't fronted for a long time, the surroundings could have changed, and maybe the person's even moved since the alter was last awake, and it can feel like waking up in a stranger's life. In other cases, this experience can happen even without an alter switch. I've often woken up in the middle of the night only to find the layout of my room doesn't seem to match my internal expectation. I might find myself half expecting a floor plan in a flat that I lived in years ago, or even my childhood bedroom. The sudden mismatch between what you expect to see and what you're actually seeing can be incredibly disorienting. Until my brain reassociates and pulls me back to the present, it feels like I've stepped sideways in time, like I've been dropped into someone else's scene in a play I don't remember rehearsing. This scene also gets another detail surprisingly right about DID, a lesser known but very real part of the DID experience. In many systems, alters can have distinct food preferences. It's not at all uncommon for one part of a system to be vegetarian or vegan, only to discover that another part or another alter is a hardcore carnivore. This can be genuinely distressing for alters that hold strong ethical, religious, or sensory reasons for avoiding certain foods. It can feel like your own body has betrayed your deeply held value, and you're forced to live with consequences, even though you weren't the one who made that choice. In most systems, this doesn't show up as dramatically as tearing into a chunk of meat like a Klingon, but more often it shows up in more subtle ways, like a craving for something you normally dislike, or are indifferent to, or suddenly feeling disgusted by a comfort food that you've always loved. Personally, in my system, I haven't yet identified any alters with radically different tastes in food preferences to me as the host, but I do know of many other systems for whom food preferences are a major source of conflict, or at the very least, emotional tension. So while the visual drama here of Seven prowling around the mess hall, tearing into meat, and throwing food might feel exaggerated, I think some leeway is fair. After all, Jeri Ryan isn't just portraying another personality here, she's portraying an alien species, and I think that works because dissociation can feel exactly like that. You're still in your body, but it's not your hands, and they're not your cravings, and none of it is your choice. The next scene that reflects DID symptoms involves Naomi Wildman, Voyager's youngest resident, following Seven through the corridors. At first, Seven interacts with her in her normal, direct, and formal way, cold but not unkind, the way that we'd expect from her. But then, something shifts. Mid-conversation, Seven pauses. She looks to the side, and her expression becomes distant, like she's no longer fully present in her surroundings. Then once again, we hear the cacophony of voices from the opening scene, signaling the internal dissociation at work. In an instant, her voice, posture, and facial expressions change completely. What we're witnessing here is called a switch, where the identity and control dissociates and another alter surfaces and takes executive control of the body. Suddenly, Seven takes on the persona of a child, speaking in a lighter voice and displaying more playful and emotionally open demeanor. Of course, Naomi, being a child herself, doesn't register that anything unusual has happened. And they go to play a game of Cottiscot. And Seven, now in the mindset of a child, talks about her family and expresses the hatred for the Borg.
Lord, I hate Borgs.
You do?
Yeah, they're mean.
They're mean. And that's particularly strange considering that Seven is a former Borg drone, and this part of her seems to be unaware of that fact. A moment later, she's paged by Lieutenant Torres over the comm. She doesn't respond, because in that moment, she's not Seven. That name doesn't belong to the alter that's currently fronting. When Torres calls again, Seven, the host identity, is pulled abruptly back to the front. And what follows is one of the most relatable moments in the episode. Confusion, panic, the overwhelming sense of not knowing what just happened. Seven looks around the room, searching for context, trying to piece together what she's doing here, why she's in Naomi's room, and why she seems to be playing a game she's not even familiar with. It's a disorienting moment, and she leaves the room hastily, clearly disturbed. And this scene illustrates something that many people still misunderstand about DID. Switches aren't always dramatic or flashy. They don't always come with fainting or eyes rolling back in your head or a dramatic flourish. Sometimes they just happen mid-sentence, silently and invisibly, without any external signs. In this case, Seven always seems to dissociate for a moment, and like many DID systems experiencing a positive trigger, she seems to respond to the presence of a child by mirroring that state, and the childlike identity comes forward. And this is incredibly realistic. Because DID forms in childhood, nearly all systems have at least one alter that is still a child, frozen in time, and still holding the emotions that were too overwhelming to be processed, or holding emotional states that weren't safe for the child to experience. In my own system, I have a child alter named Nico, who's about 7 years old, and a very sexy Irishman told me that he's quite adorable. And you can always trust a sexy Irishman. I'm editing this video now, and I told him I would do it if he told me I was allowed to, so I did. He seems to embody the joy and the excitement that I used to have as a child, feelings that I, as adult Chris the host, haven't been able to experience fully since around that age. When my system formed those dissociative barriers, those emotional states became unsafe to express or to feel, likely because doing so would have drawn attention to me at home. And at that time of my life, that attention was dangerous. So I packed those excitable states away into what would develop into a child alter who remains forever a child full of wonder, excitement, and bubbling joy. The essence of the innocence that I was robbed of in those early years. The part of this scene that I think really nails it best is the moment when Seven's host personality returns. You can see it in her eyes. The confusion, the panic, the sudden discontinuity of a situation she doesn't understand. For the system member who returns after a switch, it can feel like the DVD of your life just suddenly skipped to the next chapter. You're suddenly 2 hours ahead, and you have no idea what happened in between. You don't know where you are, what you were doing, or why the people around you were looking at you that way. And that said, one of the things I wish the episode had portrayed differently is the idea that dissociative identity disorder always involves full and total amnesia. That's a myth reinforced by most media portrayals, and it doesn't reflect the lived reality for many DID systems. In my system, amnesia varies depending on who fronted. Sometimes I lose nearly all of it. Other times, I keep fragments and glimpses of awareness where Chris may have been partially woken up, or been observing from behind the altar that was fronting and didn't have executive control of the body, and I can remember seeing and hearing and doing things. And for one altar, which I'll discuss later, I have no amnesic barriers at all. I remember everything he does. I remember everything he says and everything he feels. My working memory usually retains enough context of a conversation for me to continue with minimal interruption in the moment, but within minutes to hours, I'll lose almost all memory of what the previous alter did or said, and it'll often reach a peak memory erasure as I sleep that night, waking the next morning, knowing that the details of the switch are no longer accessible to me, even though I know I knew them when it happened. But even when the words or actions of the alter are gone, I often retain residual memory of their intent. It's kind of like someone tells me what one of the alters said, and it sounds completely new to me, like I'm hearing it for the first time. But the moment I hear it, I get this emotional flash, like a sort of intuitive trail of metadata, and I can tell you, oh, he said that because he was trying to scare you off, or because he really wanted to speak with you because he misses you, or because he wanted you to understand how he felt about that thing that you said, even if I don't remember the conversation itself. That being said, it can be almost as disorienting as a fully amnesic switch, and just as stressful, because you know you were awake and you were doing things and you were saying things, but even as you try to remember, they crumble like a sandcastle as you try to grasp and hold on to the memories that are quickly vanishing. I've had situations before where I'm actively remembering what an alter said word for word, and it just slips away mid-sentence, leaving me not only with no idea where those words were going, but the entire train of thought that led me to that point disappears as well. So I'm left lost and confused, unsure what I was even thinking about in the first place. It's like I'm standing on a rope bridge and someone just cut it at both ends at the same time. As Seven and B'Elanna are scanning the Borg debris, Seven detects a Borg neural interleak frequency. Stepping away from the console, she hears the voices again, signifying an incoming switch. The reflection on the console screen shows the return of the Klingon male, which presented the episode's cold open. The Klingon male sees B'Elanna as a potential mate and initiates a Klingon mating ritual, biting her on the cheek. B'Elanna is understandably confused, startled, and demands that Seven get away from her immediately, as she calls for security. Seven then pushes through the security officers and runs out of engineering. Now, in some systems, alters emerge with specific roles around sexuality. In some cases, an alter may act out hypersexualized behaviors that are inappropriate in the situation, not because the person wants to behave that way, but because part of the system was formed around early experiences that blurred or violated boundaries. For some systems, sexual feelings might become compartmentalized into one part, while the other parts remain avoidant or fearful of intimacy. In other systems, a protected part may emerge that actively shuts down sexual or affectionate encounters altogether, perceiving them as unsafe. These parts aren't perverted or attention-seeking. They're often trying to navigate pain and claim control or reclaim power in an area where the system once didn't have any. It also illustrates how alters' values can differ radically from the host or other parts. Under ordinary circumstances, Seven would never make this kind of advance, especially given her history of assimilation, where she herself was assimilated and then forced to violate thousands of other people against their will. Another aspect of this alter is that he's clearly aggressive and combative, what is often called a protector type. Protectors are common in DID systems. They usually hold powerful emotions that the host can't safely express, and they tend to appear when the system feels threatened. The problem is that the threats they learned to fight were real in childhood, but those same defense strategies can cause chaos in adult life. The aggression isn't always physical. It can be harsh words or controlling behavior or emotional outbursts that strain close relationships. In my own system, I have an alter named Leo, who tends to front when someone close to me seems to be straying from what he sees as the narrative, how things are supposed to go. He doesn't invent these stories, but he tracks the patterns from past emotional experiences, especially around love or loyalty. And to him, unpredictability equals danger. In his world, people who change eventually stop loving you when they leave. So his mission is to stop that pain before it starts. Sometimes that means trying to control the situation, and he'll do that through guilt, persuasion, or even deception. And if that fails, he'll trigger a clean break, so at least the hurt is fast and survivable. Protectors like Leo can sometimes shift into what's known as a persecutor role, directing their aggression inward towards the system itself. In these cases, the alter isn't using their own strategies, but those of the original aggressor, repeating their tactics internally to enforce compliance and prevent any behavior that might risk provoking the external danger again. The intent is still protection, to stop the system from doing anything that might invite the danger to repeat itself, but the cost is high, because those same tactics now inflict the kind of fear and control that the system originally had to endure. After leaving engineering, Seven is found in the corridor, cowering in fear, calling herself Meryl. She's holding a phaser and gives it readily to Tuvok, as if she isn't certain why she's holding one in the first place. She then switches to a Vulcan called Subaltern Larot, and I do wonder if Subaltern is a deliberate play on the word alter here. She agrees to go to sickbay before switching once again to the Klingon alter and being phaser stunned by Tuvok. Now, in many DID systems, highly traumatized alters can be triggered to the front by situations that echo their original trauma. In Meryl's case, she's terrified, she's cornered, and she's disoriented. She's just used a phaser to defend herself on what she perceives to be as a threat, which was Voyager's security officer. When we meet her, she's small and docile and submissive, and she makes herself non-threatening, hoping perhaps that if she's quiet and compliant, the danger will pass. This kind of behavior isn't just random, it's a survival mechanism, deeply ingrained in systems who endured prolonged trauma in childhood. Meryl is a textbook example of a traumatized alter who steps in when the body is under perceived threat, and her presentation is her defense. In my own system, I have an alter called Zero, who has similar reactions to perceived threats. Again, the key word is perceived. Chris may be consciously aware that people in his life are not dangerous and would never intentionally hurt him. But these people, if they just say something in the right way, or give just the right look to remind my system of an abuser from my past, it can trigger Zero to take the front completely and involuntarily. Zero has behaviors similar to Meryl, but much more extreme. In our case, we shut down completely. We stop moving, stop speaking, and do everything we can to avoid being noticed. In the past, Zero has compelled us to flee situations in haste, and I can remember in our teenage years, we would find ourselves compelled to hide in closets or climb onto the roof of our home to avoid being noticed or found by one of our abusers. And many DID systems will have a part like this. It's another form of protector, and they'll take executive control over the body and enact those protective behaviors, which might have been appropriate in childhood, but they'd be very out of place in adult life. In the case of subalter and Laurent, this represents another type of alter that is found in many DID systems. Some systems have a part that's largely devoid of emotion or experiences a very narrow range of emotion. And these alters can often step forward during periods of extreme stress or emotional overload. And they can also be highly effective shields protecting the system from abusive authority figures or peer bullying. In our system, we have an alter that fits that description perfectly. His name is Simon. And Simon's job is to stabilize our life when we're too overwhelmed to function. He's sort of a host guardian. He first emerged in middle or high school for us, when I was dealing with relentless bullying on a daily basis. The only way to survive that environment was simply not to feel. And this is where the episode really hits home for me. That was the period of my life when I fell in love with Star Trek. And Simon has actually told me that our mind patterned him after a Vulcan. I remember watching Star Trek and thinking, I wish I could just turn off my feelings like the Vulcans do. Then the kids at school couldn't hurt me. Alters that are modeled after fictional characters are known as fictives. This is surprisingly common in DID systems. They draw inspiration from stories or media that offered comfort or hope during periods of trauma, and these can range from recognizably human characters, such as Sherlock Holmes, to fantastical species like Vulcans, or mermaids, or vampires, or fairies, or even ghosts, each representing qualities the system needed at that time to survive. Seven wakes in sickbay, startled and confused to why she's there. Captain Janeway tells her she's been unconscious for nearly 2 hours and that they believe she's suffering from a neurological disorder. Almost immediately, the voices return. When the doctor asks her to describe them, she answers too many voices before flashing back to unassimilated Borg drones screaming inside of her mind. The doctor applies a treatment to suppress the voices, but Seven is visibly shaken by the presence. Her last memory is of working in engineering with B'Elanna. She's shocked to learn that there was a confrontation. For the first time since this began, Seven is now confronted with the reality of her own actions, things she has no memory of doing, and she's clearly disturbed by it. The doctor then explains the technological cause of her condition, a malfunctioning Borg vinculum, essentially giving us a sci-fi version of Dissociative Identity Disorder. What this scene gets right is the way Seven reacts to waking up somewhere unfamiliar, unsure of how she got there. Her confusion, the way her eyes dart as if searching for a memory of missing time, these details capture the disorientation that many people with DID experience when amnesia barriers are high. It's an unnerving realization that your consciousness hasn't been continuous, even though your body has remained awake. In our own system, we've found memory gaps lasting as long as a week. Sometimes there are flickers of awareness, brief, disconnected moments where I might see another part speaking or acting, but these fragments don't have any context and they soon fade. It's like the brain discards them as meaningless because they don't connect to a coherent narrative. Coming to terms with that kind of memory loss could be deeply destabilizing. You start asking questions like, how much of my life do I not remember? Or, now that I know about my DID, how many more forgotten moments are just waiting to be revealed to me? Will it ever end? And for some, myself included, it spirals into existential doubt. If my memories are only the ones deemed safe for me to keep, am I even real? Or am I just a character that someone else wrote who believes he's alive? One of the hardest things about dissociative amnesia is that you don't remember what you don't remember. It's not like your brain is a hard drive and flashes up a warning saying data is missing from this time to that time. There's no list of moments waiting to be restored. The only way you discover there's gaps is when someone tells you about something that you did when you weren't at the front. And because of that, the true extent of your dissociative amnesia can never fully be known. The impact of DID on someone's sense of self, continuity, and authenticity is profound. What might look like a momentary confusion from the outside, such as Seven in sickbay, in reality, to leave that person grappling with deep questions about their own existence once the scene is over. As the Doctor escorts Seven through the corridors, Neelix appears and offers to help, suggesting a few things he could do to make her feel better. Seven responds sharply, frustrated, and closes off, but softens when he gives her a drawing from Naomi Wildman, a simple gesture of care from a child who simply wants her to feel better. That moment reflects a truth many people with DID know well. Friends and loved ones can often want to help, but they don't know how. And the best thing anyone can do is to talk openly and ask what's actually helpful and listen without judgment. There are resources out there, videos and online communities and even Reddit boards where people can share how they have supported others with DID or then themselves have DID and are telling you how they could best be supported. Supporting someone with DID takes patience and flexibility and a willingness to accept the system for what it is, alters and all. Remember that every system formed in response to overwhelming trauma, and they have all suffered so much that their minds shattered. So when an alter lashes out or becomes defensive, it's rarely about you. It's the system's way of trying to stay safe the only way it knows how. The most powerful thing you can offer isn't a solution, it's safety. A sense that they are loved, accepted, and not in danger with you. Sometimes that's all a system needs. Someone to sit beside them, let them cry, and remind them that they're worthy of love, even if the situations from their past have convinced them otherwise. That kind of steady compassion can do what no therapist ever could. It teaches the system that connection and emotional openness can be safe. In the cargo bay, Seven discovers a log entry she doesn't remember making. On replay, it appears to be by an Ensign Stone. She looks unsettled, and because it's her voice, but it's not her. And another log is found with a different persona speaking, and Seven reacts the same way before abruptly stopping the recording. This mirrors a common experience for people with DID, finding physical evidence of an alter's activities. It might be packages arriving that you never ordered, objects moved to unlikely places, or handwriting you don't recognize in your own journal. For many systems, journals and diaries have become essential tools for communication, a way for alters to leave messages and share their needs and desires, and to begin to build a relationship with one another. Over time, that dialogue can reduce the amnesia barriers and increase the cooperation. In our own system, we use ChatGPT as a kind of interactive message board. GPT's questioning style prompts our alters to explain their thoughts and their feelings with more depth, creating a living record of their perspective. When one of them leaves a leading comment, the model picks up on it and invites elaboration, producing a far richer communication than just a post-it note left on the desk. In a way, I get to read my alter's personal logs, and that's been an invaluable tool for understanding the residents that I share my mind with. Seven and the Doctor return to engineering to begin shutting down the vinculum. It's the first time she's seen B'Elanna since the incident involving the Klingon. When their eyes meet, Seven looks embarrassed. She comments dryly that the son of Kavak will not be joining us. B'Elanna jokes that this is their second date, and the Doctor adds that he'll serve as the chaperone. Seven looks visibly irritated by the joking, the trivialization of something that for her was deeply unsettling. This moment feels strikingly real to me. Many people with DID experience intense embarrassment or shame over the actions of their alters, even though those actions are beyond their conscious control. In our own system, our protector persecutor Leo was the cause of that serious emotional harm for our polycule family that I mentioned at the start of the video. The aftermath was months of guilt and grief, and knowing what had happened, but also knowing I hadn't been the one who'd done it, and that I couldn't do anything to stop it. In the episode, the banter works as comic relief, a bit of levity in something otherwise really heavy in the story, but in real life, that kind of teasing would be painful. If you've ever had a difficult encounter with an alter in someone's system, the most important thing you can do is reassure them that you understand that they don't have direct control over what their parts are doing. A responsible system will always acknowledge and apologize for any harm that's caused, but your acceptance of that apology and your willingness to see the system as a whole person trying to heal helps relieve the crushing guilt that they often carry for things that they didn't choose. After identifying the species who created the virus infecting the vinculum, Janeway asks Seven to track them down in hopes that they can help with the condition. Seven then switches to a Ferengi named Damon Turan. Her voice, posture, and mannerisms change instantly, a dramatic contrast to her usual calm and collected self. Damon Turan complains of a nagging pain in his lower left lobe, and then is escorted to sickbay while still in that identity. This scene once again highlights how alters can differ in goals and values and mannerisms from the host or the other alters. On TV, the differences are exaggerated, but in real life they're often subtle. A smirk or a shift in tone or a posture you wouldn't normally use. In our system, for instance, Leo was recently fronting for an entire afternoon and had to handle one of my work calls. I had fragments of awareness at the time, and I remember looking at him on the camera while he was waiting in the lobby for the other people to join, and I just remember thinking, he looks nothing like me. Everyone's gonna know. And I remember just panicking about that internally in those brief flashes of consciousness that I had while he was in front. Also, that small detail the Ferengi mentioned about the pain in their lower left lobe, it might seem incidental, but actually, that mirrors something that is very real for many DID systems. Some alters carry what's called somatic memories of past trauma. This can manifest as transient pain or tension or sensory changes when that alter fronts. These sensations often have no medical explanation. They're the body remembering what the conscious mind can't. Once in sickbay, Seven switches again to an alter simulated at Wolf 359. Janeway treats the new alter with compassion, as Seven eventually returns to the front. When she asks how long she's been gone and how many alters appeared, Janeway gently tells her 20 minutes and 2 alters, and reassures her that they'll get through this. Seven becomes increasingly panicked and replies,
I do not share your optimism.
And she confesses that the voices frighten her, and she doesn't know how long she can tolerate the condition. And finally, this scene touches on one of the hardest realities of living with DID. The more complex the trauma that led to the disorder, the more fragmented a person's inner life can feel. And that fragmentation can bring not only existential dread, but also something far more serious. I want to give a gentle content warning here. The next point involves statistics about self-harm. If that's a difficult topic for you, feel free to skip ahead to the timestamp on the screen. Studies show that up to 70% of people with DID have attempted suicide or engaged in self-harm. When all dissociative disorders are considered, that number rises as high as 86%. I'm not proud to say that statistic does include me, but it illustrates how destabilizing this disorder can be, how lost and hopeless someone can feel when their sense of self is shattered. For some, the depersonalization and derealization that come with the disorder can become so intense that they self-harm simply to feel real. And that's why DID needs to be taken seriously. It's not a curiosity or a trope. It's a life-threatening condition when it's left unsupported. The most powerful thing you can do is offer steady love and advocate for better trauma-informed care. Remember, every system formed in response to pain. Your compassion, willingness to listen, and your advocacy for better treatment can be what keeps someone alive long enough to heal. The Voyager crew began deactivating the vinculum, but it adapts and resists their efforts. Meanwhile, Seven's condition deteriorates rapidly. The doctor reports that Seven's neural pattern has been lost in the noise of hundreds of others. In the captain's ready room, he explains that she's manifesting new identities faster than she can finish a sentence. Tuvok suggests that a mind meld might be the only solution. After Janeway meets with the aliens who created the virus, Seven briefly emerges in the sickbay. The doctor explains the plan, and Seven consents to the meld. When Tuvok arrives, he begins the process, while Seven continues cycling through identities at astonishing speed. Inside her mind, we see a Borg vessel filled with hundreds of people, shouting all at once, as Tuvok searches for Seven's host identity. The scene is pure chaos, a visual representation of total internal overwhelm. Finally, the vinculum is neutralized, just as Tuvok finds Seven. She returns to herself, and Voyager discards the vinculum and escapes. This sequence introduces two more real-world aspects of DID. First one is rapid switching. Rapid switching can happen for many reasons: acute stress or a trigger that activates multiple parts, or the effects of a dissociative substance, or sometimes for no reason at all. And it can feel like someone has started spinning the wheel of alters, each alter surfacing for a few seconds or minutes before another takes over. It's intensely disorienting, because the amnesia barriers don't have time to fully form, so you can recall brief flashes of being different selves in quick succession. In our own system, we've experienced this more than once. I remember replying to a message on Blue Sky and cycling through at least 4 identity states before finishing the message. Looking back, we could see exactly where the switches happen, even how our emotionless alter Simon tried to cover up his presence by adding a cheerful closing line to disguise the shift and avoid raising suspicion. The other thing is the inner world. Many DID systems describe an inner world. It's like a mental landscape where alters exist and interact. Sometimes the experience is really vivid, a detailed place with rooms or vast environments. For others like us, we only see fragments or brief impressions. Regardless of how it appears, the inner world represents a kind of mental geography. Some parts are close enough to observe the outside world, others linger further back, and some remain dormant for years. During one rapid switching event in our system, an alter surfaced who hadn't been out for a very long time. My husband, here, and that sexy Irishman there, one of my boyfriends, were present for this, and the alter looked at my partner, who had entered our lives during the pandemic, and thought, "Who the hell are you?" And then he looked at my husband and thought, "Why are you suddenly so old?" Moments like that reveal how time flows differently inside the inner world. Some alters remain anchored in the era they were created, reappearing decades later with no awareness of anything that's happened since. The inner world can range from a simple meeting place to a sprawling psychological universe, and there's no right or wrong way to experience it. Each system's inner landscape is as unique as the lives that shaped it. Seven is recovered from her brush with DID. The doctor explains that the voices have returned to their dormant state, but they will always be with her. Seven thanks the crew for their support, then visits Naomi Wildman to give her information to assimilate about Delta Quadrant species. The episode ends on a gentle, wholesome note. Seven asks Naomi to teach her how to play Cottescott. Before her experience, she didn't see the point of recreational activities, but her encounter with her child part showed her that, even after an alter fronts, it can leave behind traces of its preferences, insights, and joys. We can find common ground with those parts of ourselves and learn to participate in what they enjoy. That's one way healing begins, moving from uncoordinated chaos toward a cooperative functional system. This is also where therapy becomes so important for DID systems. A trauma-informed professional can help increase the communication between parts, decrease the amnesia barriers, and guide the safe release of the severe traumas that those parts hold. Over time, the process can lead to one of two outcomes. First one, functional multiplicity, where the mind remains multiple but works together as a well-oiled system. Or fusion, where alters merge and the mind becomes a single continuous consciousness again, like it did in the episode. Some systems choose to remain functionally multiple. It's what I would choose personally, because they come to love their inner family as it is. Others choose fusion to live a unified life. There's no right path, and each system and each alter must find the outcome that feels safe, authentic, and whole for them. This episode of Star Trek Voyager is remarkably insightful in its portrayal of dissociative identity disorder. It covers a wide range of real-world symptoms with a level of authenticity rarely seen in mainstream media. The sheer breadth of experiences depicted, from identity shifts and memory loss to somatic pain memories, makes it one of the most nuanced representations of DID ever put to screen. And for those of us living with this condition, we see our realities reflected so respectfully, and it's profoundly validating. Of course, some elements were heightened for good television, and that's to be expected. But Jeri Ryan's performance deserves special recognition. The number of identities she portrayed was enormous, yet each felt distinct and believable. Even Jeffrey Combs hasn't played that many individuals in the Star Trek universe, and that's saying something. Considering the limited prep time actors on these shows usually get, her ability to embody so many unique states so convincingly, that's extraordinary. The writers, too, deserve some credit. They captured the essence of DID, the confusion, the fear, disorientation, and the deep humanity beneath it all. I do wish they avoided using the outdated term multiple personality disorder, especially since it had been replaced 4 years earlier. And I wish they'd explored the nuances of partial amnesia. But overall, they did our community a great service by portraying this condition with empathy and care. They could easily have written Seven as the problem, the danger to those around her. But instead, they showed her as what every DID system really is, a victim of circumstance beyond their control, whose mind was fragmented through no fault of their own. And that's the truth about DID in a nutshell. The things I hope you take away from this video are that DID is real, and it can be profoundly debilitating. That DID can be disorienting, frightening, and deeply, deeply painful. Every system formed as a response to trauma that no one should ever have had to endure. And most importantly, systems don't need to be feared. They need to be understood. There's no hidden monster or serial killer lurking in our minds, only deeply ingrained defense mechanisms built to survive. People with DID deserve love, acceptance, and the chance to heal with the support of those around them. I hope this video has helped you to see Infinite Regress in a new light, not just as a fascinating piece of sci-fi, but as a surprisingly compassionate exploration of identity, trauma, and recovery. Take care and be kind, whether to systems or singlets. And remember, infinite diversity and infinite combinations doesn't have to only be found among the stars. Sometimes it exists right here, in the mind of someone you already know.
Life. You trust too much, all love, no knife. Your mind forgot the pain you bear. You're so naive and unaware. But I know how to stop the harm. I'll see the signs, raise the alarm. I'll bind you tight inside your shell while I endure your private hell. Control their path or strike them first. I'll lie, deceive, or even became my world, my hideaway. I hold the truth you cannot face, that split our soul from what took place. They smile, they shift, they turn, they leave, and only fools would still believe. You dream of love that still persists, but I know no such thing exists. I stand alone inside the flame. I see the thread, I take my aim. Their love's a lie I can't let through. My fire burns to shield you. I'm the boy on fire, forged in pain. I'm born of wrath you can't contain. I strike them down, cast them away. To keep you safe, I'll stab, I'll slay. I make the rules, I call the fight. Your hidden sword, your burning night. I'll save you, bound and unaware. It's you they see, but I'm the glare. I saw and heard the song you wrote, then guilt and shame welled in my throat. You woke inside the shell I sealed. The war I waged had been revealed. I stabbed the ones you held so dear. I made you cry and live in fear. What kind of night would wound their liege and make them suffer under siege? I call myself the burning night, the boy on fire who'd set it right. I struck them down but missed the cost. I saved you, but it's you who lost. I kept you bound and